Thank you for double-clicking your mouse tonight. You're listening to the Midnight Frightcast in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Long Dead Midnight Frightcast, episode number 88. It's your Scream Queen Maddie here. Joining me today, right below me on the screen, I don't know where he is in real life, is King Captain Banana Awesome Sauce, or our Doctor of Filmonomics, Greg.
Greg the movie guy is dead. I killed him. I am now King Captain. What's up, everybody?
Right down next to Greg is Joshua, the guy in the room, the guy who likes to watch.
I have missed. Oh, I jumped on your intro. I'm sorry, Maddie. Can you start over?
No, we're not doing this like Daenerys Stormborn thing where you have like 90 titles.
I haven't done this for a while, so I had my timing.
Guy who likes to watch, first of his name.
Us Josh, guys. And right next to me is Patrick, Doctor of Everything Else.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Well, spoiler alert, we're still in quarantine because some of you cunts won't wear your mask.
Yay! What's this, month like 9 now?
Yeah, we've been doing this for a while via Zoom. So is everybody else, so I think we're in good company. But tonight, we've kind of got a special, whatever you want to call it.
It's special.
It's just real special, guys.
You're very special.
So what we're kind of going to do tonight is we're going to chat about how horror's doing right now. It's kind of having a little bit of a moment, maybe not. We're also, the guys did their 31 days of horror last month, and we're going to wrap that up, talk about what they watched, because I was a lazy piece of shit and didn't do that. So those who don't understand teach, I guess, or whatever the saying is. So we're going to start off tonight and just kind of talk about what horror's doing right now in quarantine, just, in general with our streaming services and, just kind of what's been going on. It's having a moment, but at the same time, it's not.
Well,
so anyone want to jump in about that?
I'm going to jump in because I know that for all four of us, the show of the year that we wanted to see got postponed to next year with Terrifier 2. And I mean, that is common for a lot of movies that came out this year. The anticipation of seeing something in 2020, I believe wasn't the Halloween movie supposed to be in 2020 as well? And that got pushed. Just a lot of things got pushed to next year. It makes complete sense that they did it. But then again, the question then comes out, and we brought this up earlier, chatting before the podcast, was how does horror survive when people can't actually go out and see it, and where does it survive, and where are they finding their home at? And one of the things that came up is we know Shudder has got to be having a banner year. I know that most of the content that I have seen so far has been on Shudder, and it's cheap to be on their service because I think they only charge $5 a month.
$5.
And they are putting out original content. I don't know if they're finding people and they're saying, okay, this is an exclusive. I don't know if it's necessarily Shudder original, but it's definitely Shudder exclusive content. And so there was a number of movies that I had seen during quarantine that are damn good movies that came out exclusively on Shudder. Now, I know there's other streaming services, obviously, for it. But I think with a genre that is able to crank out movies as quickly as the horror genre does, I think they're really finding a home with these streaming services right now.
Yeah, Shudder's. Oh, go ahead, Maddie. Sorry.
I was going to say, like, when you think of movies that you absolutely have to see in the theater, you normally think of huge action-packed explosion stuff, like things that require, like, the ambiance and the surround sound and all that stuff. And, like, a lot of horror just doesn't have that. Like, I mean, you have, like, some really cool, like, sounds and stuff. Like, I actually, for someone who hates going to the movie theater, I would actually really have liked to see Antrim in the theater just because of the sounds and everything. But I kind of think it makes sense that horror's really kind of having a good time just being exclusively on streaming services, especially like there's so many genres out there, and I feel like horror is the one that has specialized streaming services for it. Like you have Shudder, you have Screambox, there's another one that I can't remember what it's called, but it has multiple different streaming services, so it's kind of like it was built for this almost.
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of my content for 31 days off of Shudder. Just kind of like Patrick said, they're dropping a lot of original content on there, and not just original content, but like really, really good original content on there. And they switch up their titles probably more than a lot of the other streaming services do when it comes to horror, because that they're exclusively horror. They switch up their titles a lot. Netflix and Prime, you're kind of waiting. Every month they'll drop like 5-10 new titles on there. Shudder switches quite a bit.
Now, I had not really been familiar with Shudder until recently, with being in quarantine. Do they, Josh, in your experience, because I know you've been with them for a while, do they tend to keep their titles much longer than other places? Do you see them dropping titles?
I feel like they drop new titles on there just more often. And like there's if you go like on the main page, there's like their titles, but there's a place on Shudder that you can go and it kind of breaks down everything by like subgenre and special titles and stuff like that. But their main page switches up once in a while, but they switch their titles out quite a bit.
I guess my question, actually, I need to rephrase it, is do you find that they retain their titles longer in the sense of, like, I'm going to throw out the movie Host, that it's going to be there for the next year, or it's going to be unavailable after 6 months?
No, you can find it there it sits there. It definitely sits there longer than if you were to wait for it on Prime or Netflix.
Okay.
It does sit there for a while. It would probably jump off the main page after a while, but if you dug deep enough, you will find it on Shudder for a while.
And for me, I'm finding that Shudder is more for the horror enthusiast. You're not going to find a lot of the mainstream films there, but if you're a horror enthusiast, you're going to find some really damn good content on Shudder.
Yeah, I said my brain just went yep. And something in my brain was like, nope, you're not going to say that. You're gonna
Welcome back to the Frightcast.
Right? It's just like my brain just like fell out my ear. I don't know what I was going to say. So
Clearing those cobwebs out, man.
Right. There's quite a bit to shake out. The thing I was going to say though, off of Shudder, is I wish some of those mainstream titles would have just, because kind of going off what Maddie said, horror is like the one kind of genre that you don't really need to see in the theater to get the full viewing experience, I don't think. And so I wonder how well some of those titles that they pulled and pushed to next year, how well they would have done just VOD rentals off of Prime. Because, Antebellum was going to be a huge title that would have gone theatrical, and I think actually did go theatrical for a little bit, but it also dropped VOD on Prime. And so I wonder how it did on Prime versus how it did in the theater experience financially.
Right.
I know, people are looking down on that. The theaters are looking down on that, obviously, because they want to make money, but they're fucking closed. Like, nobody's open. So you're not taking any money away from that theater. You're only really taking money away from that film that should have just done a VOD option, $20 rental at home, and you can watch it from the comfort of your own couch. And I totally would have done that with quite a few titles that would have dropped this year if they would have come out.
Well, and like Shudder kind of killed it right at the beginning when everyone started getting all locked down, because they did that like free month for everybody. And like I think that drew a ton of people in, and that was really, really smart. Like they did some really great marketing, but like subtle. It's not in your face all the time, but like I think I follow them, but even before I did, it just kind of like popped up on like my Facebook feed, and it got like shared around like the horror community. Like they did a really good job just like kicking ass.
Shudder, I think, is also the only streaming site also where you can go and actually listen to they have horror podcasts on Shudder as well. So there's an option on there if you're a podcast fan, and especially a podcast fan of the horror genre. I think Shudder is the only place that has options like that too. And again, really good content.
Greg, you have Shudder, right?
I do.
Yeah. What do you think?
I like Shudder.
Thank you, Greg.
I don't know. I mean, there's nothing more that can really be said about it that hasn't been said already. I spent the majority of October just scouring Shudder to find anything because Netflix had barely anything. Amazon Prime is a bastard all on its own. Hulu, I feel like, was probably a second contender to Shudder during October month, just because, like I said, Netflix had a few things, but it was all stuff that I had seen, which at the first half of the month, I didn't want to jump into because I wanted to save those in case I needed them. And I'm glad I did because I needed them. But Hulu actually had some pretty good stuff. I'd have to go back and see what I watched on there, but I know that there was more of a list from Hulu than I had on Netflix and whatever garbage was at the bottom of the barrel on Amazon Prime. So I'm grateful for having Shudder, a subscription to Shudder this October, because I would not have finished with newer content.
Anything I watched off of Amazon Prime for the 31 days, I actually rented. They were all VOD rentals. I did not watch anything off Prime.
Okay.
I was just sitting there in the free.
Right, but their free stuff is
it's hot garbage. Right.
Garbage.
It's everything I watched off of Prime. They were all VOD rentals.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the same with me.
Yeah, they had quite a few. They had a handful of good VOD rentals off Prime, and I knew this year that I was going to have to drop a couple of dollars just to watch some of the ones that I really wanted to watch to put in this challenge.
But what you're dropping in some of those rentals is so much less than what you would be dropping if you went to the theater to see a new release.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when you see some of these new releases coming out and they're still charging, $20 to see it, I mean, you can still weigh that with Amazon Prime, getting some fairly decent ones for, $2, $3, $4.
I think the most I spent on Prime was $5.99, and that rental was 1,000% worth the rental. So I was not bummed that I spent $6 to rent a movie. And again, it goes to indie filmmakers. Really, they're not studio films. So those indie filmmakers drop their content for $4 or $5 on Prime. And if you're an indie filmmaker, like you're kind of giving back. Like you'd want somebody to do the same thing for you if you dropped your film on Prime and dropped it for $3 or whatever. So I had no problem spending that money on somebody that dropped their indie film on Prime. That's just me though.
Yeah. I think it'd be really cool if there was more of a streaming service that was just for indie filmmakers, because on one hand, you think, yeah, $4 or $5 isn't a lot, but think of if you did that multiple times throughout the year, then that's a little too much for me. And that's unfortunately why I don't tend to watch a lot of indie films that you have to rent, because I'm yeah, it's just $3 now, but that it's only $20 mentality gets my bank account screaming every month. You know what I mean? It would be really great if there was just a streaming service for indie filmmakers where they could drop their content, that it was more accessible, because as I said, it just adds up. It adds up over the years, or over the year, and to where it's I could spend a few $100s. And I'm happy that it's going to indie filmmakers instead of fucking Warner Brothers again. But at the same time, I don't have that money,
Right.
I'm not really surprised that Shudder's having a moment, because I know we've talked about this before when you're looking at horror as a psychological standpoint, because I know we've talked about when there are scary times, people tend to flock towards horror because they're looking for a monster that they can be afraid of instead of just circumstances. You know what I mean? That's kind of the psychology of horror that a lot of people kind of go towards. But I am very glad I have stayed away from freaking, what's that movie? Contagion. I've not wanted to watch Contagion right now. So I'm no, that's just the news. No, thank you. Yeah, that's just the news.
Any zombie film. We're at the beginning of any zombie film.
Yeah, no, I am not watching 28 weeks later. We're all right there anyway. I'm just no, I'm okay.
It's going to be a really interesting year for horror, and again, horror podcasts, and anybody that does a top 10 horror film list at the end of the year. It's going to be a really interesting year to see what people come up with and what they pull from. Because if you're not a podcaster that goes to these film festivals where you get early new content and you get to see stuff that won't necessarily hit streaming services yet, or theatrical releases yet, and you're just kind of stuck to the I watched this new movie off of this streaming channel, the content that you're going to have to make a top 10 is going to be super limited.
Yeah.
You're not even, I'll be interested to see how many studio films land on a top 10 list because nothing came out.
Yeah.
So how do you build that list?
Yeah.
And I
Either
feel like
that or
that's
what does come out is going to be like the most garbage movie and it's going to win best just because it happened to come out in a year where everybody else was pushing for 2021.
I'm going to say that there's still going to be some decent content for the 2020 lists because, and we'll get into it later, you guys know that I try to, in my 31-day challenge, to watch current movies. And I found some pretty decent stuff out there for 2020. Is it as good as maybe some of the past years? Maybe not quite, but there's still some diamonds in the rough there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm still slightly bitter about Terrifier 2, but like, I believe you, I guess. But that's kind of like, speaking of Terrifier 2 that has like a cult following, like I think that's where kind of indie horror has kind of like pulled ahead this year because they have those fans and they have their like audience, and that fan and their audience is going to follow them. Like, I'm not saying like big studio films don't have like a following, but I feel like a lot of people who like really watch films and filmmakers are just kind of like over Hollywood, like, and they have been for the last couple years. So I think maybe like indie horror is going to kind of pull ahead this year just because they were the ones releasing on VOD before.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that. And even if it wasn't in 2020, indie horror has been taking a lead to Hollywood horror in the last couple of years. So if indie horror is going to do anything, this is your year. Make it count and take over whatever Hollywood garbage is coming out, because Hollywood is just sucking on horror right now.
Yeah, the few studio films I did watch on my 31 days were turds, to be honest with you. And there weren't a lot of them. I think there was like 2 or 3, but they were turds in the old punch bowl. So 100% agree on that studio thing, or on that indie film thing.
I was just doing a quick Google search here, just trying to find out how many dedicated horror streaming services there were. And it's pretty much just between Shudder and Screambox. And I don't want to knock what Screambox does. Because like I said, they're offering content that the Netflixes and the Hulus and the Amazon Primes are not doing. They just don't happen to have the library that Shudder has. They've got a much smoother and streamlined interface than what Shudder does. But when it comes to pure content, Shudder has them beat hands down.
Yeah.
Is Shudder offering, or not Shudder, Screambox, are they offering original content at all, or are they just a service supplying for horror movies?
Yeah, I don't know about original content or even exclusive content on that. I don't think I can have
I think they do. I think every October that I've been following them, I think they do they do something that's exclusive to them, and it's like 13 days of horror or something like that in October. And I know it's also and they're not very expensive either. They're like $4 a month or something like that.
Yeah, they're pretty cheap.
But I know they've done before where you can watch those like exclusive 13 movies for free. And I could be talking out of my ass, but I know they do something similar to that, and maybe I just haven't really paid attention. But I think Screambox does focus a little more on indie movies, and I know Shudder does a lot of indie movies too, but like I think when I've looked through Shudder or Screambox's library before, that's what a majority of what I've seen.
Yeah, they do have their exclusive ones on their site. Scream is $4.99 a month, and Shudder is $4.75 a month.
So they're competitive.
Very
that's
affordable and very competitive with each other.
Yeah.
And I know Screambox, you can get like a whole year, and what is it, like $38?
$35, I think, is what I just read. An entire year is pretty damn cheap.
Yeah, so that's not bad.
Shudder's the same way. I think I bought I don't remember what the cost was, but I bought my year subscription because it was significantly less. So it was a promotional for Screambox and Shudder.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were thinking about it, and like both of them together are cheaper than fucking Netflix and Hulu. So just saying, that's what you watch.
So now we just have to have Shudder sponsor us.
Yeah, Shudder.
And if you have all of them, they're all cheaper than cable.
Right? Oh my God. Yeah,
we drop cable, we're streaming only, and it's so much cheaper.
Yeah, if you're out there and still using cable, like, what you doing, baby? Like, this is 2020. My parents still have cable. I've been trying to get them to drop it for like 5 years. It's trash.
Shut it down. Fuck cable.
I know, and they know it's trash. Cable's like, we know we're bad, but come back. We won't hit you no more.
Right.
Anyone else?
No,
Sorry,
I like I said before, if you don't have Shudder and you're an enthusiast, and you probably are if you're listening to us, get Shudder. It's worth it.
Yeah, Shudder is fantastic. And you can get it through your Amazon Prime, so it's just like one bill. Seriously, Shudder, you got to sponsor us now. We've been jerking you off like for the last like 20 minutes.
We've been giving them love for several months, actually.
Yeah, like
We have.
yeah,
we do love.
We've reviewed a lot of their movies.
Yeah, we do love us some Shudder. All right. So now that we know kind of where horror's going, where it's at, let's just jump into our 31 Days of Horror discussion. So these guys were good. They did their homework. They did their thing. I am a terrible host, which is why I'm talking right now. So we'll go around first of all, and just like, I just want to know why you guys picked the movies that you did for your 31-day challenge. And I'm sure we just talked about this. A lot of it's you're just scraping the barrel. You're just getting the gunk out, climbing at that last door. But some of it I'm sure you picked because you actually wanted to see it.
And I also think an important question to ask us is, why the hell do we do this every year? Why do we put ourselves through this? Because, Josh was saying,
hate ourselves.
Yeah, Josh was saying off cast, it's like once you get done with that 31 days, you don't want to watch anything for a good period of time. You are movied out. So why do we do it, guys?
I feel like this is the first year that we got really close to not doing it. Like, I feel like we kind of pulled the trigger on this year at the very last minute that we started talking about it. Because usually I feel like we gear up for it, a few weeks in advance, like nobody watch anything, just nobody really check out anything new. And that's kind of what I did leading up to this. But like, we're usually talking about the 31 days a little bit in advance, and I feel like it was like the week before we were like, all right, should we do it? I mean, maybe not, whatever, yes or no.
Do you think the circumstances of this year made it different for us as well?
100%. Usually we're always in communication with the four of us just for podcast stuff, and we're also doing every other week podcasts, or at least before this we were doing every week for podcasts. And I think that helps kind of keep us in that realm of what's going on. And, after the last cast that we did back in September, it was radio silence for a long time, even going up to October. And then, we hit that week before, and it was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and even before that, I mean, it's been 2 months since our last podcast, and it had been 2 months prior to that since our, so, I mean, we've gone 4 months with one podcast in between it. Right. So I definitely think not being able to talk about the genre with you guys, sitting in especially, guys, I miss having you here at in the basement over here and at the table and talking to you face to face. I really miss you guys, and that makes a huge difference as well. I'm not as excited about this as I used to be when it comes to watching the films, because I'm not able to talk to you guys about them as easily.
Well, and it's also kind of like we all are more excitable on this podcast than we talk to each other in real life. You know what I mean? Because like it would be so boring for our listeners if we sat here and we're just like, House of Thousand Corpses is the tits. Like, no one wants to hear that. So we kind of. I was going to say, we kind of have like more pumped up, and we kind of have like almost a persona that we take on here because we got to be excited and we need to keep people engaged and stuff. And like this year has been fucking depressing for everybody.
So hard.
Yeah. And so like it's harder for me to like get into that mode. And I'm sure it is for you guys too. Cause like, I'm not excited. I'm just kind of like, not on a ventilator today. Yahoo. Like there's that.
And I also think that we've had the opportunity. We're at home more, obviously. We find projects to do around the house. I mean, Greg, you like remodeled an entire basement, didn't you?
I could show you. I'm sitting in it right now.
Well,
yes,
we're trying to show that on the podcast.
We're weeks away from having
But what I'm saying is, you guys, I mean, you had a major project going on. Things were going on. Josh, you filmed an entire fucking movie somehow or another. And,
tried.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that we had the opportunity to focus on something different, so we kind of stepped away from this. And once again, going back to my original question, do you feel the circumstances affected us going into this 31 days? It definitely did for me.
Yeah, I just have not been excited about horror this year at all. And again, when it comes to not like, I'm even less excited about it when I don't have anybody to talk to about it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
That's a big thing about, watching some of these films is like you have somebody to bounce that film off of, whether it was good or bad, or you have, different opinions on it. And when, there's only so much I could be like, talking to my wife about this horror movie I watched before she's like, that sounds fucking stupid.
She's like, get away from me, Josh.
Josh, shut up.
So when you don't,
it's at that point where she said, "Josh, just let's go have sex, so you'll shut up."
She would never say that in a million years.
Just had enough.
She would. Never mind. It's just even that 31 days. I was like, hey, I watched this movie, and she's like, "Yep, that sounds awful." So when there's nobody to bounce these films off of and nobody to talk to about it, the excitement is kind of gone for me.
This year has been kind of the perfect storm for all of this to happen, where we're not in the studios anymore. We're not chatting back and forth with each other. And I don't want to go too far into it because I think this is going to segue nicely into our topic of the 31 days, but there's also no movies coming out. Everything just kind of fell into this giant shitstorm of nothing is happening. So nothing's happening on the reviewers' end. We don't have anything to talk about. What are we supposed to do? And again, it kind of goes back to us blowing Shudder. Thank God that there was somebody putting something out, because holy Lord, we would have been screwed.
Yeah. And I was actually the opposite. I was actually, because for some reason, even though I don't really do a lot of my Halloween stuff that I used to do. Like, I am not involved in the haunted house thing anymore. Not really involved in filmmaking anymore. Like, any of that, I'm like, so this year I actually was like, shit, I might watch more than The Void 6 times in a row. And
lies.
I know, again, I only watched it twice, so I feel like I was doing good. I felt like I was like, oh my God, I might actually get to sit down and do this. And then shit that our listeners don't give a fuck about that I'm not going to go into because it's, my life outside of this podcast. It's still shit happened and I wasn't able to do anything. And I was just kind of like, really, we're trapped in the house and I still can't even watch 31 fucking movies. Come on, man.
It was, though. It was tough. And again, we're going to go into this too, but the three of us approached this 31 days of horror film completely different. All three of us, we do not do it the same. Every year, I'm like, this year I'm going to approach this like Patrick, and every year it's just I try and then I crash into the side of a building. But we all do approach this 31 days completely different.
So I guess that takes us back to Maddie's original question before we went off on a tangent, and that was, I believe, Maddie, how do we choose our movies? Was that what
let's talk about your approach. Use Josh's word.
We've been doing this for what, 5 years, 4 years now?
Longer than that. I think we're pushing 6 or 7 at this point.
I think it was 6 or 7 unofficial, but 4 definitely with the podcast. And I think after the first year, I decided I needed to use that time more wisely. So the past few years, I've been choosing movies that were released in the United States in that year. So obviously for this year, movies that were released in the United States or released for viewing in the United States in the year 2020. And the reason I do that is so that I'm more prepped for the end of the year. I don't have to go back and watch even more movies to pick out my top 10 of 2020. So that's the madness to my method.
I tried to do this year. The start was, I'm going to try to watch as many 2020 films as I possibly can. I'm only going to hunt down 2020 films. And then I was going to sprinkle in a couple of movies that I absolutely have to watch during that 31 days. And I feel like I succeeded for the most part when it came to that. I did watch a lot of 2020 films. Every year I say I'm going to make a list and I'm going to follow it. And then I don't make a list, or I think last year I made a list and that list lasted the first maybe 5 movies, and then I deviated and went away from it. But the approach this year was I was going to just watch as much 2020 content as possible. And I succeeded on that. I did watch a lot of 2020 garbage, but it was 2020.
So typically my process in going into the 31 Days of Horror Challenge is to be as organized and prepared as I possibly can. It's from previous experience going into this with no plan, no movies that you want to see, and just flying by the seat of your pants is never a good idea, because you always end up at the bottom of the barrels on Amazon and you're kicking yourself for it. Because this year kind of snuck up on us, this October snuck up on us, at least me, I had full intentions on not completing this challenge this year. And I even sent out a message when we were kind of starting to talk about it of, I'm going to do the best that I can, but because of lockdown, I've been getting crushed on over at church doing digital stuff for them. October's in the middle of my work busy season. And like Patrick said, we're finishing our basement right now, and that is a full-time and a half job in itself. So there was minimal time for me to do anything. And it was one of those of, I'll watch what I can watch, and if I can get to it, then awesome. If not, I'm fully anticipating on failing miserably this year. And I surprised myself, actually. I found little bits of time here and there where I could sit down and watch stuff. But because I went in fully unprepared, it got ugly real quick. And again, kind of going back to nothing was being released. There was nothing out there that I really wanted to see. It was bottom of the barrel on most of the streaming services, which really sucked. And it got to a point where I had to just fall back on the horror movies that I usually go to during this time. I just kind of looking over my list, I think half of the movies that I watched were movies that I had seen prior to, and I knew that they were going to be good just so I could get through this thing, which I don't typically like to do, because obviously, like Patrick said, this is a great time to watch any current year horror movie, so we have something legitimate to talk about during our top 10 end of the year cast. And there was just nothing out there that I wanted to see. And so again, I fell back to what I knew was good. And if I saw something, I would trickle it in, and that's what I got. So this was a wildly off year for me, especially. And I don't typically fly by the seat of my pants. I like to be more prepared, but it was a bad year,
Just imagine how good next year is going to be when all that awesome stuff that was supposed to come out this year comes out.
It's going to be overload next year.
Yeah. And I'm not even mad about it. I'm very excited about a lot of the content that hopefully comes out next year and that we can all see.
I'm going to call it right now. We're going to need a 2-part cast. We're going to have to do 10 through 5, or actually 20 through 10 on one cast, and then 10 through 1 on another one.
I'm already going to predict my number one movie next year, though. It's going to be Terrifier 2. Like, duh.
I hope that it is good. I hope that it is great. I will be very sad if we have overhyped it in our own heads when it finally comes out and we go, oh, that was nice.
I know, I will cry. Yeah. I will cry legit, tears if it's bad, but everything I've seen coming out from them looks kind of fun. And they said they were gonna outdo the Hacksaw Death. I mean, come on.
Don't know how you can do it, but let's see. Bring it on.
The bar's been set.
The bar has been set and the bitch is hung from it. So let's go.
All right. So how do we want to handle this?
So let's just hop right into it, and we're gonna round robin this. And what was your top 5 best? And we'll get to, I know everybody's normally is honorable mention, so let's just focus on the top 5. Greg, what was your number 5?
Going from 5 to 1?
5 to 1.
Okay.
Wait, we're not going to do honorable mentions, or we're going to do them?
We're going to do them after, but let's just focus on top 5 for now, and then we can chat about kind of see this, kind of don't,
And we also have our worst, right?
We do have our worst, but we'll save those because those are the fun ones. I don't give a fuck about what was good. I want to know what was trash. I'm going to watch those. Okay.
Number 5 was a movie I wasn't anticipating liking, but again, it was one of those that I caught it at the right moment and was really, really interesting. Was called The Beach House.
What house?
It was pretty simplistic. The Beach.
Which is off Shudder, correct, Greg? Shudder?
It was, I believe so. I don't remember where a lot of you.
Yes, it was on Shudder.
But we'll say it was Shudder.
Yeah,
it was okay. Good. It started off really slow, and it was kind of one of those red flags of shit. What did I start watching? But once it got into it, I really enjoyed it. It was a nice payoff in there. One of the best shots that I actually saw throughout this entire challenge was from this movie. I think Patrick, you watched this movie?
Yep.
The shot of the guy walking into the water was one of the coolest shots that I have seen in a long time.
And it was well paced the way they handled it. It was just really
Absolutely.
well paced.
Absolutely. So that was my number 5 favorite from this challenge.
The beach house was on my list, and I just didn't get to it.
I reckon it's good. It's good for a one watch. I recommend watching it at least once, especially for that walking into water scene.
You like cut out like halfway into you saying the title, and I thought you said the bitch house, and I was like, that's why I said I'm sorry. The what house? I thought we watched that, and I thought it was just called Sharkensaw Women's Prison Massacre.
Right.
Josh.
The first film I'm gonna go number 5 was a film I rented off of Prime, and it goes with another movie that I watch every October. I watch a movie called The Monster Squad. This year, a documentary came out on Prime called Wolfman's Got Nards, and it is a documentary pretty much about hardcore Monster Squad fans and kind of how that movie affected their life, whether they saw it as a kid or whether they didn't catch it until they were an adult, and how poorly that film did when it came out in theaters. That movie opened against The Lost Boys. So you can kind of see why it would kind of tank. That movie was in theaters for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then it got pulled because it went up against The Lost Boys. And there's just no fucking way it was going to win. But a lot of people found that film on VHS later in rental stores. And I was 1,000% one of those people as a kid that would rent The Monster Squad every goddamn weekend. So that movie's been with me for a really long time. And Wolfman's Got Nards was definitely worth the rental price. It's on Prime. If you're a fan of The Monster Squad, it's definitely a documentary to check out. That's my number 5.
Patrick.
I had mentioned earlier that I like to do movies of the current year so that I can add to my list. But as I was doing this, watching these movies, I went down this found footage rabbit hole for a couple of days. And I found a movie called Be My Cat, a film for Anne. And essentially what it is, a Romanian filmmaker becomes obsessed with Anne Hathaway. And he decides to make a film to convince her to star in his movies. And as he's filming it, he is murdering, torturing these women, but still trying to convince Anne Hathaway to be in his movies. And it was a really interesting concept. And it was the guy who was in the film filming it was actually the filmmaker, the guy who wrote, directed, and starred in this movie. And it was just really, really interesting and captivating all the way through, the way that he entrapped the women, saying that they were auditions, all sorts of things. So it was something that was never on my radar before. I'd never heard of this. The title jumped out at me. And then I watched it. It's on Prime, by the way. And it hooked me. And it's from 2018, I believe. And it rose quickly to my top 5.
All right, let's go to number 4. Back around, Greg again.
So there's been one thing that I've been waiting to see, and I finally decided to pull the trigger on it just because I needed something to watch, and it looked like it was good. Not a horror movie, but a series. It was The History of Horror, Eli Roth's History of Horror. Oh my God, this is such a cool thing. Getting to see him talk with fans of the genre or super greats of the genre, whatever the word I'm looking for is, just blows your mind. Absolutely blows your mind watching this. So that was, I should have put it at number 1, but I wanted to save that for actual movies that I watched instead of a series. But, you know, if you're a fan of the genre and you're looking for something cool to watch, and you haven't checked this out, I should specify because this has been out for a while. Definitely check out History of Horror.
I think he's got a season 2 coming out here real soon.
Does he?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
I have the biggest schoolgirl crush on Eli Roth. Like, it's embarrassing. So, like, I'm really embarrassed that I haven't seen this.
Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, Schoolgirl Crush. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, hey.
And that's on Shudder?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. And they have a podcast on there too with more content. I actually started watching that by accident, but I want to go back and listen to that because they have a lot more content that you can listen to.
Nice. Josh, number 4.
Number 4 was a film that dropped super late on Netflix, like really late on Netflix. called Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight. It's a foreign film. It's about a group of teens that go to a camp for people that are addicted to their electronics. So they have to go to camp to kind of wean themselves off of being this addicted to the electronics, whatever. It follows a pretty basic story structure, but it's a really super fun movie. It's super bloody. It's just a lot of fun. The killers in it are just super gross. I guess twin brothers that are covered in boils and just grossness. But it was a super fun movie. I had a really good time with it, and it's on Netflix. So I would definitely check that one out if you get a chance.
Yeah, I had seen that one as well in the past month. Josh and I had fun with that one as well.
Okay.
Patrick, what's your number 4?
My number 4, I think, came out of recommendation from Josh at one point. It is on Shudder. It is a film called Yummy. And this is about this woman who goes in for breast reduction. So she goes into this a place that does plastic surgery. And then it ends up that nefarious things are happening at this particular surgical center. And it gets bloody disgusting quickly and hilariously at times. And I just had so much fun with this one. Part of it was subtitled. And then all of a sudden they started talking English, which made things so much easier for the rest of the movie. But again, just had a lot of fun with this one. Lots of blood, lots of gore.
It moves super fast too.
It does. It really does. I didn't know what to expect from it. The movie cover, the movie poster kind of drew me in as well. So I think really good marketing on it. So
and that's
Yummy on Shudder, number 4.
That's a Shudder original too. That's original.
Oh, it is?
All right, guys, we're moving on to number 3. Keep moving right along. Swinging back around to Greg.
This is a movie that I had seen an ad for on Netflix, and I'm disappointed that they waited so late in the month to drop it. But I'm glad that I got to see it when I did. It was a movie called Cadaver. It was a foreign film. I don't want to talk too much about it because I feel like we could do it as a review for us. But really enjoyed the story. It was super original. It was pretty damn gross at points, but following the characters, I think, was the favorite point for me. So really, really enjoyed that one, Cadaver.
I did watch that one as well, Greg. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as you did.
And that was the reason that I wanted to watch it, was because you said you didn't like it as much, and so I wanted to see what it was about.
Yeah,
I'm glad that I did.
I think it just moved too slow for me. I think that's all it was. To
Sure.
be honest with you. For me, it took a long time to kind of get going. So
Sure.
my number, what the fuck number are we on?
We're on 3.
Number 3.
Number 3 is another Shudder original. I think Patrick watched it as well. It's called Scare Me. Really, really, again, a really good movie. I liked how they did it. I thought they were setting it up to be an anthology kind of film, and then it didn't go that way. 'Cause it's kind of set up like they're like telling each other different scary stories. So I thought they were going to go into this anthology kind of route, and then they didn't. And it's a good mix of horror and comedy. It's 2 actors, and that's can set you up for just absolute failure if those 2 actors are just not on top of it and just really, really good. And both the actors, I think, had writer credits and director credit as well on this movie. So they were on everything. And they brought it together really well. It was well done and a ton of fun. So
yeah. I saw that one after the 31 days, and I've got to say it is some of the best writing and best acting I have seen in any movie, regardless of horror or not. I just thought the performances of the 2 main actors. There was a third actor that came on briefly.
Really late. Yeah,
who was a good support actor and helped it out. But yeah, I agree. It was a really solid film.
You're talking about the pizza delivery guy at the end there?
Yeah.
Patrick, number 3.
From Netflix came a Asian movie called #Alive. It's about the rapid spread of an unknown infection that leaves an entire city ungovernable chaos. But there was one survivor that remains, and he's in isolation. It's kind of about his story. And then he discovers there's another survivor in the apartment across from him. It's like this square apartment with with a commentary in the middle, and how they were able to get together and survive this. And there wasn't so much horror and gore in it as I was pulled in by the story of these two people. I thought it was really, really effective for me because of the strength of the story. And that's the reason it's in my top 5, not so much for the horror and the gore, but for the story itself within an infected subgenre of horror.
Well, Patrick, you were watching CNN. You weren't watching a goddamn horror movie, so.
I was watching a rally of some sort. Yeah.
Yeah, you were just watching outside of Target every other month in fucking Omaha. You weren't actually watching a movie.
Yeah. It was closed circuit TV. You're absolutely right.
All right, guys, we are down to our top 2 spots. So these better be good. Greg, back to you.
So I actually have a split for my number 2. So I'll talk fairly quickly about both of them. First one was a Shudder original called Extremity. This one had been sitting in my queue for a while, and I know that it had a very similar, not necessarily tone, but story towards the movie that we had reviewed a while back called Haunt. And so I wanted to see what was different, what was the same, and how it played out. And I was really impressed by it. Significantly darker, significantly gorier than Haunt. It was a great story, I felt, and I just really enjoyed the watch on this one. A little bit of a social commentary in there as well, but I don't think that it overshadows what the actual story of Extremity was trying to portray. And then the second one that tied for number 2 for me was the sequel to The Babysitter, and that was Babysitter Killer Queen. I don't want to talk too much about it because I think we might be doing this as a review, but just a quick little thing. I appreciate when a horror movie doesn't take itself too seriously in a sequel, and I felt like this was a really good one to kind of follow that rule, where it was entertaining. It followed a lot of the same beats as the first one, but it didn't take itself too seriously, and I really appreciated what the story was and how they got from beginning to end.
All right, Josh, number 2.
My number 2 was another rental off of Amazon. It was a film called Becky, which starred Kevin James as a neo-Nazi, just bad motherfucker. It was a survival film. This girl goes out with her dad to this cabin to just kind of get away from things after a bad event in her life. And these 3 guys show up at her house, and she's kind of a survivalist kid, and she's got to fight back against these, I think it's like 3 or 4 just Nazi characters. Kevin James is really good in this, and you know him from like King of Queens and like comedies and shit. So like when somebody like Kevin James can make a switch like this, it's really fun to watch. And the kills in there were really fun. It was written really well. And again, Kevin James as this kind of badass Nazi character was just really fun to watch him do something different. Again, totally worth the rental price off of Prime. That was the one I think I paid the most for and wasn't even mad. It was a really, really good film. So if you want to see Kevin James, and he looked kind of like not fat in that movie. Like he actually looked like he like kind of bulked up a little bit in something that wasn't fat, whatever you call that. It was a lot of fun.
So my number 2 is also an Amazon Prime rental. It was a movie that was actually postponed. I think it was supposed to release last year, but they postponed it because of the political climate that was going on. It was a movie called The Hunt. And because it was presumed anti-Republican at the time, they had postponed it to kind of redo some of the marketing around it. And essentially, and it's not an original story. Essentially, it's these strangers that they wake up in this clearing and they don't know where they are, but they find that they are being hunted and they need to survive. But there's a twist in there, and I really, really enjoyed it. This movie was solid from beginning to end. Lots of action. The lead actress, phenomenal. I've seen her in a Netflix series called The Girls of Glow. She's one of the professional wrestlers in that show. But she comes into this as an ex-Marine, and she kicks ass all the way through. Very, very solid thriller horror movie.
Nice.
I kept The Hunt and I kept Invisible Man off my list because they were studio film rentals. And so I decided to go the other way with my money. But The Hunt and The Invisible Man were both on my list. I still really want to see both those. I just haven't gotten to them yet.
I had been waiting a long time to see The Hunt, so I'm glad I was able to include that in my 31 days.
Kind of been hearing back and forth stuff about The Invisible Man, but I just hate Elizabeth Moss's face. Like, I know that sounds so bad, but I hate her face. No.
I have a love-hate relationship with Elizabeth Moss. To me, she is an incredibly outstanding, gifted actress.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that she's so Scientologist that I have no respect for that religion at all.
That's not even my problem with her. Like, you can be crazy if you want. Like, go be crazy somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, my thing is, it looks like she always has a big handful of shit under her nose. Like, always. She always, that's exactly it. Thank you, Patrick. Now we have award-winning actress Elizabeth Moss on here with us, because that was... Yeah, she just like always has this look on her face, and like she's a really great actress, but she can't act out of that like there's shit under my nose face, and I can't.
Like it's resting bitch face, kind of.
No, it's not even resting
shit face.
It's resting shit face. Yeah, it's not resting bitch face. Yeah. It's legitimate, just like resting like horrible smell face.
She was in another film I wanted to watch for the 31 days, a film called Shirley. And
that's on Hulu.
That's on Hulu, yeah.
Again, was on my list that I didn't get to.
So it'll hit my 2020 list, but it didn't get to the 31 days. So anyway, The Hunt, number 2.
Greg, number 1, 31 Days of Horror film. Go.
So my number 1 actually came at the 0 hour. It was my number 30 film that I watched. And I needed something to clear out. And I found a 2021 that I had been putting off because I, quite frankly, didn't want to watch it because of who was in it, but I was still intrigued just a little bit. And that movie was The Color Out of Space. And I am so glad that I watched it because holy shit. Josh, stop shaking your head. It was just a mind fuck. Absolute mindfuck, and it was done so well. You watch it for the visual effects alone because that'll just blow your mind. The characters, they were okay, take them or leave them, but I really had fun watching that, and I did not anticipate enjoying it as much as I did. So Color Out of Space.
Yeah, that surprises me because one of y'all watched it and hated it.
It was Josh.
Guilty. Yeah, I just didn't like the sequel to Mandy. I'm sorry. I wasn't a fan of Mandy.
And I'm right in the middle because I enjoyed the first half of it and hated the second half when it went completely 150% Lovecraft.
That's kind of where I'm at because I enjoyed watching Nicolas Cage act for the first half of that movie. And then I just did not enjoy watching Nicolas Cage become Nicolas Cage in the second half of that movie.
Yeah.
It was just really hard for me to keep at it.
Go ahead.
Should we save this one for a review? Would you guys want to do a full review on it?
I would be the tie break. Listen, next time I go to Oregon and I can get some of those sweet legal shrooms, I will watch Color Out of Space. But until then, I'm not watching this.
I honestly think Maddie would like this movie.
I hate Nicolas Cage, though. I hate him so much.
If you look past him.
It's the weirdness of this. You like The Void, Maddie, for fuck's sake. It's the weirdness.
Oh!
It's kind of like The Void on LSD.
That's it.
That's 100% it.
The
that
weirdness
is 100%
of this
it.
movie. That's it.
Fine.
Past Nick Cage, it's the weirdness of this movie I think you would really enjoy.
Okay, well, I will go to Oregon and I'll watch it.
I'm wondering how screwed up this would be if you were on LSD, because I felt like I was tripping watching that movie completely sober.
Yeah, that second half or that third act was just...
It was wild.
Mind-blowing.
Okay, I mean, I like drugs. I like Lovecraft. I'll give it a shot. Who's next? Who's Josh? Number 1.
My number 1 film in the top 5 will probably, if we do a top 10, I'm going to call it now, will probably be my number 1 on my top 10. And that is a movie on Shudder called The Cleansing Hour. If you have not seen it, did you see it, Patrick?
I did not see it.
If you have not seen it, I would hunt it down and chase it because it started out as a short film on YouTube and then got made into a feature film. So you can watch the short on YouTube, but the feature on Shudder is really, really good, really well done. I'm not like even a huge fan of these exorcism movies, but it's so different that I just super dug it. So I would chase down The Cleansing Hour and check it out on Shudder. It's super good. Maybe I'll eat shit here in a month, but right now I'm calling The Cleansing Hour will probably be my number one on my top 10.
Where was it streaming?
It's on Shudder. Watch the YouTube short first and then jump into it if you're gonna do it. But yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Well, Patrick, number one.
My number one for the 31-day challenge is another Amazon Prime rental. It is called Spree, and it is about a young man trying to get as many followers as possible on his social media streaming channel. And he drives for a company called Spree. It's like an Uber company, but actually the people he's picking up, he ends up killing live on his stream as he's driving around. And during this time, he's trying to get more and more followers. And it is just nonstop fun, I felt, for this one. Some unique kills, and just the amount of fun and energy this young man that was the lead actor in it had. Film, just a really, really, really good movie. It will probably hit my top 10 very easily.
And now I found out how we can get some more followers, guys. Yeah. Who's got a working car? All right. So now that we've gotten our top 5 out of the way, any honorable mentions that you guys kind of want to throw out there? You just let's just go and everybody just say their honorable mention. So we'll start with Patrick. What were yours?
Out of my list, I'm only going to throw out one honorable mention. It was a 2020 film called Uncle Peckerhead. And yeah, that's what it was called. And it's about a punk band. They get their first tour, life on the road type situation. And they're joined by a man-eating demon as their roadie. Fun gore in this one. Some pretty solid rock music in here as well. And just fun indie film. Sit back, relax, don't think, just enjoy. Uncle Peckerhead.
Fantastic. Josh, honorable mentions.
One of them was Babysitter Killer Queen, but I don't want to talk about it because we're going to do it as our own separate review on another cast down the road whenever we decide to do this again. So the
in
one
2 more months.
Right. So the one honorable mention I have, and I didn't write down where this was streaming. I wish I would have. The one honorable mention I have was a film I watched called The Day of Our Lord. It's a film that I think Maddie would dig the shit out of. Here's the thing. It made me feel really gross. It's a really, really good film. Again, it is another exorcism film, and I don't really chase those, but it's another movie that just dropped. It looks super interesting, and then just kind of stuck with me. The story is really good, and it's all over the place. You never really can like call where it's going. Just when you kind of think like, oh, you think it's kind of go one way, it veers left. It keeps you guessing almost the whole movie. But I watched that movie, and I think I wrote my review, and then I think I did write in there. I was like, Matt, you should check this movie out because I think you would dig it.
Awesome. Greg, any honorable mentions?
Yeah, I did have one. Not a new one, which I'm bummed about, but I'm actually glad that I watched it, was Rob Zombie's Lords of Salem. This was a movie that I was up and down about wanting to check out just because I had heard negative reviews on it. You know, hearing negative reviews obviously is a turnoff, and why would I chase something that people aren't liking? But I saw it and I thought, you know what the hell? Let's pull the trigger on it. And I was actually fairly impressed by what it turned out to be. I felt like it was the Rob Zombie movie that I was expecting from the beginning. It's just dark and creepy. Watching, I can't think of her name now, but his terribly acting wife,
Sherry Moon Zombie.
Watching her descent, Sherry Moon Zombie, thank you. Watching her descent in this movie, I think was probably the best part of it. And when you get to the end and see the imagery of what he reveals, is just like, holy shit, this is a Rob Zombie movie. This is what I will judge Rob Zombie movies by. And I was just really, really impressed by what he did with that.
Where does that sit for you, Greg, as far as Rob Zombie's filmography? Where does that sit for you?
Oh, damn. It's tough to see because I need to go back and watch Devil's Rejects again and I still haven't seen the third movie in that trilogy. I can't think of the name of that one. Will help.
Three from Hell.
Three from Hell. Thank you. I still haven't seen that. I would rank it probably second or third. No, probably third or fourth in there, with House of a Thousand sitting at the top. Halloween sitting at number 2. I feel like I'm missing more that he's done. I'd have to go back and look, but I feel like it would sit in the upper echelon of what he's done so far.
Cool. I was curious. Very cool. Do we want to just quickly list off the five crappers? Like, not really chat about them too much, just kind of.
I wouldn't really go into like insane detail about why you didn't like them. Just kind of like, unless there's one that's like really fucking bad.
Yeah, I would just say we each list our worst one.
All right, guys. Well, then let's just wrap up with saying, what was your biggest fucking shitter of this 2020? So let's go Josh first.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm going to say on mine, it wasn't the worst movie on my list. It was the biggest disappointment. And that was Gretel and Hansel. Because I remember at the beginning of the year being really excited for this really super dark kind of basically fairy tale film, and how dark they could really go in this horror genre and what they could do with it. And then I checked it out and was just really bummed on it. So again, not worst movie I watched. It definitely wasn't the worst, but it was the biggest disappointment for me.
I would agree. That was a big disappointment for me as well. Who next? Me? I'll go. Sure.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was talking and I thought I had unmuted myself. God damn it. Sorry,
for
guys.
Me, the worst of the 31 that I saw was a movie called Monstrous. And it's about this young woman who heads into Whitehall, New York, where there's tons of sightings of Bigfoot, sightings in quotes. And she's there to track down a friend who had mysteriously vanished. But the whole premise is, that she quickly learns that there's something hiding in the woods that's even more sinister than what Bigfoot could be. And it was just a snooze fest from beginning to end. And then Bigfoot comes in at the beginning and at the very end, and there's no reason for him to be in there. So stay away from Monstrous is my suggestion.
All right, Greg, number one.
So
shitter.
I've got 3 that were just god awful. One I want to actually go into a complete diatribe on, or at least want to get a discussion going, just because of what I felt the movie could have been. That movie was The Invisible Man. I'm not going to use that for here because I feel like we could use that for a whole nother discussion on a podcast. So I'll let that one go. Probably the biggest pile of shit that I saw, and I'm still kicking myself for even pulling the trigger on this, was the sequel to 47 Meters Down, and that was the uncaged version. I don't even have the words to describe how fucking stupid I was for pulling the trigger on this, knowing that it was bad, or how pissed I am at the people who tried to make this movie under a name of a really, really good horror action adventure shark movie. Who's the bigger idiot here? Just fucking A. Don't watch that movie. That's goddamn garbage.
Wasn't it on like some like big like top 10 of the year thing though?
Dude, if it was, I'm going to go back. I'm going to hunt these people down. I'm going to beat them within an inch of their life.
Yeah, I swear it was on Rotten Tomatoes films of the year, but we kind of talked about that. There wasn't a lot.
Oh my God. The characters were god awful. The story was horrid. The CG was pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Zombie sharks, really, really, really? Fuck you.
Sylvester Stallone's daughter was in that movie. There were a couple of, I think, famous daughters in that movie that were trying to get their start in there.
Trying to get their start?
Yeah.
Not a good start.
Yeah,
No.
should have just gone to porn. Fucking Christ.
Seriously, you would have had a better shot at actually being a star.
And by the way, Greg, I'm the bigger idiot because I bought that movie.
Josh, buddy.
Yeah.
Sight unseen, by the way.
Okay, that's slightly more forgivable, but had I seen that, I would have taken it out back and burned it.
And I 100% based that off of, I loved 47 Meters Down. Like, I dug that movie. So I was like, this can't be bad.
Famous last words.
Oops.
Yeah, I feel like I've said this can't be that bad for quite a few movies, and I'm like, oh, they are that bad.
Yep.
Shit. All right, guys. Well, that kind of wraps up our 31 days of horror that we did a month and a half ago. Anyone else have any comments?
It's going to be a couple weeks before I can watch anymore. But then, guys, we got to get ramped up for Best of 2020.
I'm not hosting that.
Definitely kill it in December.
Is there something that's still coming out that you're looking forward to?
I don't know. The election results already came out, so
Yeah.
my horror movie's done. There's nothing coming out this year that I'm excited about. There's a couple coming out in 2021 that I'm kind of pumped for.
There's one that I'm looking forward to, but I don't think it's going to go digital before the end of the year, and that's Vince Vaughn's Freaky.
Freaky I've been looking for, and I thought it got theatrical, so I thought that's the kind of movie that they would also drop VOD, because it's not like a huge movie, so I thought it would be VOD rental, and it didn't go. I've been looking for it. I do want to see it.
Well, it hasn't released theatrically yet.
Oh, I thought it released last Friday on theatrical.
Oh, I thought it was
I think
upcoming.
it did.
2 days ago.
I think it's already out because I saw it on there and I thought, oh, that actually looks kind of interesting.
Yeah.
According to Bloody Disgusting, Freaky will be coming to VOD 17 days after this weekend's theatrical release, which was last weekend. So in a couple weeks, I guess we'll be able to see it on VOD.
Yeah, so that one's definitely, but yeah, that's definitely on my list. Antebellum, although it already came out, I do want to see Antebellum pretty bad. And then The Hunt, and then The Invisible Man. As far as movies that have already come out this year, I don't really know what's coming out this year and what's not. There's been movies announced, but God knows if they're coming out or not.
Yeah, do you guys think, have you watched anything outside of this 31 Days of Horror that's going to, make it so you have a, comprehensible top 10 of 2020? Or is it somebody yes, somebody no? Josh is confused. Oh, that'll be an interesting
You guys have seen my list. Regardless, if I've seen 10 movies, those are my top 10.
Yeah, I think I've seen enough since January to make a top 10 list. There's a handful of movies that I still want to watch to see if they would land on that list. But even if I don't see those 5 movies, I've seen enough to make a top 10.
And like I said, I'll have a top 10. Now, how that stands up next to top 10s from past years, that's going to be debatable. I mean, as long as I've seen 10 movies, those are my top 10 of the year.
Yeah.
I have seen 2 2020 films, and I mean, the 2 I saw were good, but ain't gonna help my top 10 very much if I'm just I saw 2 of them.
What did you see, Maddie? What were the 2 that you saw that were 2020?
I literally saw Good Boy and Puka, and that's been my only 2020.
Okay.
And they were good.
I feel like in the past, you've made a 2020 top 10 list that were not 2020 movies.
Oh, no. I normally do just movies that I've seen in that year. But I haven't watched a lot this year, honestly, because we've talked about this before. I just haven't really been excited about horror movies in the past couple of years because they've been just not really my cup of tea, my shot of whiskey, my whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I think this year I probably will be hosting the top 10 for 2020 because again, I'll be I have nothing to add. I watched 3 movies, 4 of them were The Void. So yeah, this will be an interesting wrap up at the end of the year. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for tuning into the Midnight Frightcast. Does anyone have any plugs? I do just want to say briefly that we lost one of my favorite actors in the last couple weeks. Sir Sean Connery was a huge love of mine. It's the reason I like older men. He was a great actor. He did a good service to the parts that he played, and he was an iconic actor, and it sucks that he's gone.
But him and Alex Trebek are having a real good time right now. So
they are.
Oh yeah.
I hope they're having a good time. God bless them both. Anybody have any plugs?
Just a normal outro, I guess.
Yep.
All right. So if you're a fan of the Frightcast, and we know that you are, help us out. Make sure that you head on over to iTunes or Google or whatever platform you're listening to us on, and make sure that you rate and review us. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, and many, many, many more. Make sure that you check us out online. We're on Twitter. Obviously, we're on Facebook. Just look for Midnight Frightcast. And then also check out our short films, and I think we might have our feature length up there as well at midnightfrightfilms.com.
All right, guys. From the Scream Queen, Josh, Patrick, and Greg, and Aldo, apparently, thank you for joining us tonight at the Midnight Frightcast. Have a great night, and wear your goddamn mask.
Wear your mask.